They're gonna think that the regular opened ones, the fucking ones that's all dent up and scratched up and fucking beat up, they're gonna think that's worth $1 million when it isn't. Because people don't differentiate that the never been opened, perfectly sealed, mint condition VHS tape is any different than the one they've had sitting in their water soaked basement for 10 years. We are going to be doing a discussion today. Today's discussion is going to be about VHS tapes. Now, I know it's going to seem a little bit weird that that's not usually what I talk about, but you'll see real quickly how this both relates back to video games and pop culture. So for those of you guys who who are too young to remember VHS tapes are the things that predated DVDs, which are the things that predated fucking Blu-ray. And we won't talk about HD DVD because that was a failure and no one needs to remember it. So VHS tapes are these cassettes that you would put in a VCR. I know I'm talking down too majorly, but I kind of have to because some people genuinely don't know this. You'd put it in a VCR, you'd watch it, it'd have a movie or a couple episodes of a show on it, and then when you were done with it, you'd have to rewind it, and then you could play it again. So VHS tapes are majorly outdated. They've been outdated for a long time. They were outdated in my childhood. So they've been outdated for a while. And it looks like VHS collecting is starting to spike again. Now, VHS collecting is not a new thing. It spikes every few years. The last time I remember it spiking was, I want to say 10 years ago, when people were hunting down old Disney VHS tapes, but I feel like that spike only really happened because it was Disney VHS tapes, not because it was VHS tapes in general. So, yeah, I also remember like a few years back, when it was 2015, it had a spike with Back to the Future because it was like the year that Back to the Future was supposed to be happening, like in the future. So everyone was really hyped about that. It was an anniversary for Back to the Future. It was a big deal. So the Back to the Future VHS tapes were in heavy demand. Well, this time, there's no reason for the VHS tapes to be spiking. There's no organic reason. VHS tapes are just now going for a lot of money. And the thing that should concern you is it's not just any VHS tape. It's sealed VHS tapes. That means the people who are collecting these have no intention of watching them. They want sealed VHS tapes that have never been opened. And if this is sounding familiar, it's because it's very familiar to the thing that happened with gaming recently, that being where video games that were unopened were selling for insane amounts on the market. And you'd be shocked, or not shocked at all actually, to find out that it's the same company involved, that being Heritage Auctions, with VHS tapes. Heritage Auctions has been mixed up with the comic book boom, they were mixed up with the video game boom, and now since video games are starting to dip with selling thanks to the lawsuits and the expose videos, they're moving on to VHS tapes. And that's the main thing I want to warn people about is, if you're thinking about investing into this craze and getting these VHS tapes, I would suggest you to not do that. And if you do that, sell before you get ripped off, because this is a trend. It's not going to last. These VHS tapes are not actually worth these insane amounts of money. The VHS tape right now that's going for insane amounts is Back to the Future. Back to the Future is a VHS tape that was printed multiple times. You can still buy it on Blu-ray, and you can buy it easily on fucking DVD as well. I don't know if it's on any streaming services, but like, there are so many different ways to enjoy Back to the Future. You don't need to get an overpriced VHS tape to enjoy Back to the Future. But it's not to watch it that these people are fucking obsessed with. It's not even fans of the movie that are getting these VHS tapes. It's instead just people who want to be in on the speculation. And that's what this is. It's a speculation boom. It's basically an equivalent of the NFT craze. No one really cares about the worth of VHS tapes. No one really cares if VHS tapes are worth a lot sealed. No one really cares about the preservation or the collecting aspect. They only want to get into this because of the perceived money that you can make off of it. And it's quick money, too. Like, this is going to be a market that's going to blow up over the next few months, and then it will die real quickly, just like with the video game craze. And for all the people who wasted their time investing on the fucking sealed video game craze, if you're still sitting on those games, their price is dropping drastically. For anyone who invested in NFTs and Ethereum, their prices are dropping drastically. When you get mixed up in this shit, you have to be ready to lose money. Because if you don't hop off before everyone else hops off, you're going to be left with a lot of resources you don't want, and you are going to be out of a lot of money. And when it comes to VHS tapes, trust me, after the speculation is done, no one's going to want them. Like, for years, the only people who've wanted VHS tapes are collectors. People who want to complete their VHS collections. No one's going to fucking get too hyped about sealed VHS tapes because most people who have VHS collections watch their VHS tapes. One person I know of who has a massive VHS collection is James Rolfe from AVGN, and he definitely watches his VHS tapes. He has like a giant recreation of a old fucking Blockbusters in his basement. So I say beware of this new craze. Invest in it only if you have the fucking extra money and you're willing to fucking lose shit. If you're some rich guy who doesn't care about hopping in and out of these trends, go ahead. But for anyone who is just gullible, thinking that this is their get-rich-quick scheme, it's not going to be, unless you get really fucking lucky and hop off at just the right time. You're not going to fucking really profit from this. At most, you may make a little bit of extra change, but it's not worth it in the long run. And worst case scenario, you end up with a shit ton of VHS tapes nobody fucking wants. I don't even know where people are getting all these old sealed fucking VHS tapes, because like, it's such an ancient fucking form of watching a movie. I didn't even know that they had sealed VHS tapes. I can understand sealed video games, but who has sealed fucking VHS tapes? I can see like 10 years from now them hyping up sealed DVDs. It's just so crazy. Like, the VHS tapes are really fucking common. You can go to so many different yard sales, fucking flea markets, vintage stock, and get VHS tapes. There's nothing rare about them. There's no type of worth to them. eBay is full of them, and all this is going to do is make the prices spike like it did with video games. So anybody who actually does want Back to the Future, they'll have to pay an insane amount or not have it, because they're gonna think that the regular opened ones, the fucking ones that's all dent up and scratched up and fucking beat up, they're gonna think that's worth $1 million, when it isn't. Because people don't differentiate that the never been opened, perfectly sealed, mint condition VHS tape is any different than the one they've had sitting in their water-soaked basement for 10 years. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. It's a fucking scam. It's a scam. It's always a scam. Don't get mixed up in this shit unless you have money to waste.